Hey everyone, it's Saraya Walters, and we're back with another episode of the Purposeful Professional Podcast, the podcast for the people, your career, and the culture. Today's guest is from Singapore and is an environmental maven and maverick dedicated to breaking ground in the sustainability space. An environmental advocate and sustainability leader, he embodies what it's like to be a subject matter expert. Introducing Louis Chan. This episode gave us insights around greenwashing, preparing for a green job, and even how you can take your love for nature and the environment to the next level by making it the center of your career. If you have a passion for the earth, this is the one to listen to. Special thanks to Louis for his generosity and depth of knowledge and his ability to seamlessly teach and share what he knows in an authentic and engaging manner. Let's go and take a listen. Learn alongside us. All right, are you ready?
Hello, everybody. My name is Saraya Walters, and I'm the founder and host of The Purposeful Professional, the podcast for your career, the people, and the culture. Today, I'm really excited to have Louis Chan, a sustainability legend in the making. We're going to get into a couple of things about his journey, sustainability, and also the importance of protecting the planet and how we all can protect the planet. As you know, sustainability is a hot topic, not even a hot topic. It is the topic, right? We care more than ever about emissions. We care more than ever about what's going on in our planet. So I'm really excited to have a guest who has dedicated himself to caring for our planet, the nature, and all that encompasses it. So I'm really excited to introduce Louis. Louis, introduce yourself to the people on the podcast.
Thank you. So thank you, Suraya, for providing this opportunity for me to share about sustainability and also more about my journey so that hopefully the listeners can also learn from it and see where can they gain value from. So as Suraya mentioned, I'm working in the field of sustainability and I'm currently based in Singapore. So I think my career has always been a sustainability space, whether it's helping companies across different industries. But for now, the firm that I'm working for is an investment holding company where we look into investing into the mining sector. So what I do in this space is basically to find technologies to help to reduce the carbon intensity for the materials that we do take out, and also to look into different techniques. For example, looking into the possibility of using carbon credits or looking into areas such as green financing to see what can we all do to play our part regardless of the sectors that we are based in. So that's what I do as a full-time job. Outside of that, I'm also a volunteer at different organizations. For example, being a board member with different organizations such as Report Out and also the Global Center for Risk and Innovation. And on the side now, I'm also quite new in this, but I'm also trying out a startup to look into how can we make air conditioning, also part of the HVAC system, more energy efficient. So these are things that I do because I think that regardless of what role we play, whether it's sustainability or not in the world, we can all play our part to reduce the negative impact that we make and contribute to them positively to even have a net positive impact to the world. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was like the elevator pitch. That was like the elevator pitch. I think that was a very impressive introduction. I definitely see the work that you put into that. So thank you for your intentionality in communicating with the audience. So we have a segment that we're trying this season called Pop Purpose. And we basically want to start each conversation discussing something that's happening in the culture related to a particular guest's career. So today, I think when I think of the environment, I think of greenwashing, right? We have businesses who are pretending to be eco-conscious that are actually really the opposite. They are not sustainable. They don't care about people, profits, or planet. Well, maybe just the profits part. They don't really have the intentions and the corporate social responsibility. That's what we call it in America. They don't have the CSR to really be an, we could say sustainable and environmentally conscious company. So we did have an article that we're referencing, and it's from Forbes, and it talks about how the European Union is warning companies about greenwashing and that they're going to take action against it. So my first question for you is, since you're a sustainability expert, can you define greenwashing for our audience? And why do you think greenwashing is a common problem?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think that greenwashing is a phenomenon that is increasingly seen around the world, especially for regions or parts of the world whereby sustainability may not have been the tradition and that is newly evolving. And when companies want to abuse so-called the term sustainability to generate, as what you mentioned, more profits. So I think sustainability to me can be seen in different angles. I think one keyword that I came about is that besides greenwashing, there's also the idea of green lighting, which is an example of greenwashing, whereby companies actually use communications and marketing to point out particularly green features of a company's operation and that will actually draw the attention away from the other parts of the company whereby there may be detrimental harm to the planet and that they're not doing anything about it. So basically, it's like deflecting of the impact that they're actually harming the environment. So that's one type of greenwashing that I can be seen in the world. Secondly, I think that is quite common, at least in this region, is the idea of using vague language. For example, they say that the company is sustainable, what they're doing is sustainable, is green, but they do not elaborate what exactly is it. And I think that they do not elaborate because there could be things that they're hiding, or in the case whereby there may be legislation, actions against them, maybe they can say that they say that it's sustainable because of certain facts, but that facts may not be a complete picture. So I think that's the second idea of greenwashing that I get. And the last one is basically using misleading or false data, using only part of an Excel sheet or part of accounting framework, for example, to show that the impact that they're making is actually positive. But if a company makes a positive impact in a small area but harms in the other areas, then there's no point. So I think misleading or using false data is also quite common in this region. So to me, I think these are the few definitions that I came across about greenwashing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thank you for educating. Thank you for educating the audience. I think many of our listeners might wonder really how they can avoid the brands and the businesses that are greenwashing. And just from my own perspective, I know it's really hard to tell whether a company is greenwashing or not. Like it's super hard. It's not something that we can easily tell, especially when a lot of the sustainability efforts we can say are on the back end of the company and not the things we directly see. I'm sure you've heard about a lot of companies that are repurposing and essentially taking more than recycling items, but they're taking items that were to be recycled and repurposing them in new ways. They tend to sell their items at a premium in terms of cost. And we support because we believe we're supporting the planet, but there's no way to really know that they are really walking the talk. You know, there's a song like called Walk It Like I Talk It, right? We want companies that walk the talk. So how do you think we can tell as consumers which brands are greenwashing or not, and really put our dollar in the hands of those who are living their mission and exemplifying their values?
Yes, I think that the idea of companies making use of greenwashing, as I shared earlier, is quite prevalent. So, what can we as consumers do? But just a caveat that I'm not an expert at identifying greenwashing. So, if there's a campaign in front of me, I will try my best to identify if that is greenwashing. But there's no guarantee that when I say that it's not, there's actually not. Because behind the scenes, there could be a lot of manipulation with the numbers that I'm not aware of. But what I like to do when I look at different campaigns comes in different folds. So the first of them is similar to what I've mentioned. So it's basically looking at, is there any overly vague language that they're using? They use terms such as natural, they use terms such as green. I think it's for us to actually question where do they get the data from, to actually ask the brands, when you see that this is actually natural, why is it natural? Is it made from any, let's say, is it biodegradable? Is it compostable type of materials? Where does it come from? And in fact, even beyond the environmental side of things, when those things were being used, how is the human side of things, the social element, which I often think is lacking in the society today, where we all just focus on the green side of things? I think that's also something that I will look out for to ask them. And I know that I believe that every company or most companies will have someone to be able to answer it, such things. So I think questioning certain vague terms, I think that would be a good step forward. And the benefit of doing that is also to then set a ripple effect, whereby those around us will also dare to ask such questions to the companies so that they will not make such claims overly easy in the future. So that's the first thing I do. The second thing I'd like to do is, I think, is colors, because I'm a very visual person. So I'll look, is the advertising overly green? I think nowadays, I'm not sure about in the US or in Europe. Basically, in Singapore, there are some advertisement where it's just trees, where it's just greeneries. And that is, I believe that they are catering to this green mindset in Singapore. So I think then question, ask yourself, is it green because they're truly making a positive impact, or are they doing green so that it appeals to our emotions, so that we feel that they are green and therefore we'll support them? Especially banks nowadays, I think that even if their brand color is not actually green, they would just use green advertisement. So I think that's another thing to look out for as well. A story was that I think a company, I think an oil company, did ask me before, is it okay in their sustainability report to be green, even though their brand logo and their brand image is not even green? So the answer is clearly no, unless you're telling me that you are no longer doing oil, or you have shifted away from oil, you have changed your entire business model to reforestation, for example. If not, I think that's a huge red flag. And I think that consumers nowadays can easily sense that. So the second point would be then to look for green imageries. The third thing is also to tackle the definition of greenwashing, which I said earlier, which is to just question the data, ask where did the data come from, ask your experts around you or your sustainability friends around you, because you may not be able to interpret it that well, but if those around you can, I'm sure they're more than willing to help. For example, when it comes to emissions, are they looking at the direct emissions or the indirect emissions, or is this advertisement purposely only showing one side? So I think asking about data, asking about qualitative and quantitative side of things will be what I am already doing, and I hope that the listeners here can also consider doing it as well. And the next 2 points would be that if you believe that a company is doing greenwashing and you have reached out to them but they have not addressed it, then I think it's possible to report to different authorities. For example, I believe in the US there is the Federal Trade Commission who is able to investigate about false or deceptive advertising, and I think that probably other parts of the world there's also such a commissioner, so you can reach out to them. But the last point is that, to me, I feel that there are cases whereby companies inevitably or they are unconscious that they are actually greenwashing. Maybe they are not well in the corporate com side of things. So I think we should not blame companies in the sense unless they're doing it again and again, but we should try to engage with them to educate them that this act is clearly greenwashing, and it's fine if you didn't know about it, but let's do something to rectify it. Maybe you can put a statement out, and I'm sure that consumers nowadays will accept apologies. It's no longer the days whereby they just blame the company the whole time. So that is what I feel we can all do in this part. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, wow. Okay, Lewis, I'm gonna call you the professor. I'm gonna call you the sustainability professor for the remainder of this podcast, because I think that you definitely have a gift of, I just have to like break the script a bit and say you have a gift for explaining things, and you have a gift for explaining these things in a way that you're literally flowing. Like, there's this concept in psychology called the flow state. When I hear you referencing, all of these things, I can see that it's your passion because you are literally at flow. And I believe flow is where interest meets challenge in psychology. So when we find subjects that are interesting and challenging for us, we go into that flow state. So I can definitely see that you're in your gifts and you're in your purpose. So what a purposeful professional. Okay. I agree with what you're saying. I think like we can look at the fact that when a company is trying to oversell anything, right? They're trying to oversell maybe the fact that they're racially equitable, or they're trying to oversell that they are green. It almost comes across as inauthentic. And I think we as humans have a really great inauthenticity. We have a really great inauthenticity radar. I would say many of us can, and honestly, immediately look at a company or even at a person and a leader and know whether or not they embody those values. So I agree with your notion that when people do see things that really kind of make them go, I don't know if this is the way, that they should question things, that they should ask for more information, that they should know what their rights are as consumers. I think a lot of consumers, we're so used to checking off with the terms and conditions that we don't realize within those terms and conditions are rights. We have rights as consumers. Don't let the iPhone culture make you just scroll past the terms and conditions. Actually think about, your rights as a consumer and what you have the right to know and what you have the right to buy, right? Even your dollar is so powerful. So I agree with you in understanding, like, oftentimes when there is an overarching marketing theme trying to get to a certain demographic or even promote a certain value, it isn't necessarily authentic. And in the United States, we have not just greenwashing, there's pinkwashing, which is, the overt selling to women, sometimes things that actually damage and destroy us is being sold to us as being, made by women, championed for women. And these things really just serve to destroy us. And then, of course, there's also rainbow washing. There's efforts to, pilot products to the LGBT community as well. And sometimes that can also be very performative on that side. And then as a woman of color, I'm very familiar with every time there's a holiday related to Black culture, for example, Juneteenth, there's certain foods being sold, there's certain, almost like gimmicky things happening. So I honestly feel like everything that you said not only just applies to the environmental sector, but it applies to so many other sectors, and really knowing our worth and our value as consumers and demanding to know and understand the information that we need to make informed choices. Love that. All right. So we're going to skip into the people section. And as I said, we're the podcast for the culture, right? the people, and your career. So we cover a lot of different topics, but I want to kind of get into you as an individual. Even on this call today, you're very, very accomplished, put together, giving really, really, understand your sector well. You have a passion for it. I want to know, like, were you always this accomplished and put together person? If so, or if not, how did you make the transition to the goal oriented influencer and change maker that you are today?
Thank you. Thank you for the praise. I think for me to answer the question is that I don't believe that I was always like this. I won't consider myself very accomplished yet. I think that I have much more room for growth and much more room for improvement and much more impact that I can make positively to the world. But I wasn't always like this. In terms of how did I develop into my mindset currently, I think in life we all have to have a purpose. We all have to have a goal to what do we want to achieve. And for my purpose is honestly to make a positive impact on the planet or make a positive impact on the community. Because I think that we are all in Mother Nature, all in Mother Earth. The earth has given us a lot of things. I think it's time for us to give back. And I think that's quite important. In addition, I think for me, I want to have kids. So I think that for my children as well, they are basically going to inherit the land from us. So I think that it is only fair if we do not damage it and we actually give them what was the initial state of things. So I think that in sustainability, there is a terminology called the sustainable development. So basically, the definition of that is that we are having development that meets the needs of the planet currently without compromising the ability of future generations to actually meet their own needs. So basically, do not extract more than what we can actually provide. So I think that in that mindset, the fact that I have to leave something positive for my children, for the planet around me, for the people around me, I think that is having that goal, the end goal in mind, is what actually gives me motivation to do more, keep on doing what I want to do. And then a common question that arises out of that is that how do people actually find purpose? To be frank, I think that no one would wake up and say that I want to find my purpose today, but it just comes along the way. So for me, I think that in Singapore, while it's very urban, but we always hear that Singapore is a clean and green environment, which I'm sure it is. So if you ever come to Singapore, you can let me know and I'll bring it around as well. So I think that even though we are urban, even though there is much more buildings than in different parts of the world, but I think there are still a lot of nature, and the government is trying to keep the forestry still there. So for me, since young, I like to go for nature walks. I like to walk around. I like to go hiking, or to just see what is there around me. Because I do not like to coop myself in a particular room, doing, let's say, looking at digital games or all sorts of things. So I think that since young, since I was brought up in that environment that is beyond just work or beyond just staying in our houses, that there's so much more out there, nature, greenery, the biodiversity side of things as well. So I think that actually shaped how it and influenced how my purpose became to be that I have to have a positive impact on the planet, because I think that was a huge part of my childhood, and I want my children in the future to also see that and learn from that. I mean, imagine if our children grows up in a place where it's just buildings, where it's so hot, when there's flooding, when there's so little biodiversity out there. I think that's not a future that most of us will actually want. So I think that for those who are finding the purpose, I believe it will come, but be exposed to more things around you and find out what you truly believe in and what do you truly want to do in our short lifetime here on Mother Nature and Earth. Thank you.
Yeah. You're saying a lot of things I want to expand on. Number one, you're talking about positive impact. And I think that really is the root of anyone's purpose. When you have a positive intention that you put out into the world, that in itself is purpose. Because when we live within positivity, we're thinking about how we can actually improve things. We're thinking from the abundance mindset, which we talk a lot about on this podcast, just being the really positive thinker that I try to be. We're thinking in terms of how can I improve things. So I love that you said it was a journey of positive impact. I also think when you look at your personality and what you've explained to me, you always had a love for nature. You didn't see yourself being that person that was inside. And I'm not sure if you're Gen Z or a millennial, but many of us, we grew up inside. We grew up on digital devices. And now they're talking about, how that has a lot of adverse effects on us. And I think we lost that connection with nature. So the fact that you were drawn to it, I think that is a whole nother element of being naturally drawn to certain things, and how you said very eloquently, your purpose often comes to you. I've been telling people all the time, you want to find your purpose, look at your past. Look at your past. And people would say, why should I look at my past? I'm trying to evolve. We have a lot of people trying to be the next Jeff Bezos when maybe that's just not your thing. Or we have a lot of people trying to be the next, Kardashian sister, not saying that's an aspiration, but the next influencer reality star, maybe that's not your thing. I think I'm saying this thing, and I say it a lot now, that the past holds our keys to the future. And if we look at our past and we look at the things that we were always drawn to, we'll begin to understand who we really are at our core. And I think I went through a similar process to what you went through in trying to understand my purpose. I looked at my past. What are the things I did naturally as a child, even when there was no money involved, even when there was no recognition or fame involved? What were the things that I actually really loved doing and enjoyed doing? So I'm glad that you talked about your love for nature and how you enjoyed that and gravitated towards that. And the last thing I kind of want to highlight that you spoke about is the almost generational lineage that you want to give to your children in terms of the planet that you pass off to them. I think that is a beautiful statement. I'm gonna throw in the claps and the shouts and the editing, because I think that was a very beautiful statement, and I think it embodies when you live a life of purpose. You're not just thinking about yourself; you're thinking about those who are not only came before you, but those who will come after you. I think it's great that you understand that generational connection and that you do want your children, your grandchildren, your lineage to have that sense of connection to the planet. And you want that to be maintained over time rather than destroyed. So I think that's wonderful. And yes, Singapore is like a tourist destination. I was talking to my interns the other day. They told me they want to go to Singapore, all of them. So I don't know what the tourism looks like out there, but there's a lot of people who are interested. So y'all are doing something right. I've heard that it's beautiful. So there is something right that Singapore is doing. Maybe we can learn from it in America. But thank you. I think you shared some really great points that I wanted to echo. So for my next question, I want to know, like, did you grow up in an environment that prompted this interest in sustainability, or did you experience the opposite, and like what effect did that have on your personal development moving forward?
I think for me, personally, I did grow up in an environment that was a lot of nature because I like to go for walks, I like to go for hiking, as I shared. But also, my family and I also likes to go for picnics when I was a child. So we will have those picnic mats, and then we just go out. I can't remember where in Singapore, but we will go out to experience the picnics. So I think that is also a interesting side of my life. And having picnics also allowed me to actually look at my nature because we are forced to, sit down together, talk, and experience nature instead of just sitting down at our homes to actually experience that. So that was the environment that I grew up with. That actually I didn't realize it actually when I was young, but now looking back, as you mentioned, looking back at your past, I think that was one of the key things. Another thing, but if the question was also about around me, around my generation, and around when I grew up, those older than me, was there the idea of sustainability? I think that in Singapore, which is where I mostly spend my childhood in, it would be that yes, when I was young, I think people do care about sustainability a bit, but it wasn't that big of a thing until maybe the 2010s. After 2010s, more people at the past only cared about recycling, or the idea of sustainability was just that I had to recycle. If I don't, I should just recycle whatever things that I've used. I should not just throw them away. But I think that we have evolved beyond that. We have evolved to know that recycling is not the only way that we can become sustainable, because even recycling, for some context, it actually requires a lot of energy because a lot of energy has to be put in first. I think what is more important is that we should actually reduce our consumption, and that I can see it more happening now as compared to the past. In the past, people just buy more stuff, but now I think people are actually buying less. So I think that I'm proud to say how Singapore and the world has developed from the past and how we care more about the environment.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you're saying a lot of things about, number one, you're echoing the nature. And I think it's great that you grew up in the last age of like, oh, we went out for a picnic. Like imagine taking these like Gen Alpha kids out for a picnic. If you don't have a phone charger out there, if you can't get Wi-Fi out there, you're not getting any action out of them because everything we do is technology oriented. I'll see people in the park, not sure if it's the same in Singapore, and when they go to the park, they're TikToking. Okay, they're TikToking in the park and using the nature as the background to rank higher on the algorithm. So we live in that sort of culture where it's almost like picnics are like a foreign art. Like it's all, like people will say 100 years from now, oh, they used to picnic. What the hell is that? Because we're so inside. So I love the fact that you had that picnic experience. And I also think you're right. Like it started with recycling. In America, one of the things that I heard a lot growing up was reduce, reuse, recycle. Like we had the 3 R's, and that was made into a song. It was like reduce, reuse, and recycle. Like there was a song, not the best singer, but there was a song like literally was made into a song, was made into a jingle, and we would see the trash like go into the recycling and the compost being made and all this other thing. And like I agree that we have to move past that. And I'm grateful that you actually understood that from a young age. Like, hey, like this is not just like where it's going to end. This is the beginning. Like, this is the beginning of something big. This is the beginning of something that is going to actually produce change in the world. So now we have sustainability. Which is much more than recycling and taking compost and using it and doing things with it. It actually involves, I would say, sustainability as a lifestyle. It is a movement. It is more than just what is done. It is a mindset. And I think that that's kind of where we're shifting. So I'm glad that you talked about it. I want to know though, because one of the things that I'm concerned about for the next generation is that there aren't many role models that are actually speaking to the need to protect the planet. Of course, we have a lot of activists out here doing their thing, but I wonder if people are actually having role models that are promoting that interest. So one of the things I wanted to ask you were there any role models, right, or individuals that nurtured your interest in sustainability and environmentalism? If so, if you can name maybe one or two of these role models and speak about how they impacted your career, that would be great.
Thank you. Yes, I think that role models are important because they give us some direction about where can we be and what can we also do to, in this case, help the planet. So I do have a few role models, but I think one of the more prominent ones would be, I think, Jane Goodall. I'm not sure if you know of her. Basically, she's a primatologist. So what she did for I think over 50 years was basically to immerse herself in the habitats and actually experience how and to study how humans actually interact with animals. And basically, I believe it started because she realized that the chimpanzees may go extinct, and therefore she wanted to understand more. And she was a big player in the conservation sort of space. So I think she's one of my role models because she did it much more than me in the sense that she actually goes and study conservation. She actually brings herself to different forests or areas to actually study them. So that's something that I have not done, but I would love to do. So I think that she's definitely someone I actually look up to. I think that around us, there are also different types of role models. I mean, the more common ones would be individuals such as Greta Thunberg and many other more who are more prominent in the sense. But to me, I think that besides Jane Goodall, other role models that I like is basically people like you and me. Basically anyone around us who have contributed in a way to the planet, whether is it through community cleanups or is it through planting of trees in a sustainable way, in an effective way. I think those people around us are actually my role models because when I look around me, at least amongst my sustainability friends, and I'm glad to say increasingly amongst my non-sustainability friends, is that they are putting effort to going out there to actually clean up their beaches or to even do simple and small things such as using I'm not getting disposable takeaway containers, but actually bringing their own, using not using straws. I think that's also one thing forward. So all these things to me are actually I look up to it because to be frank, I don't do 100% of things that are sustainable. I do most of it, but not all. So looking around me, I can see all these actions being done. It gives me even more motivation to know that, wow, these are also things that I can do even more. So if they are doing it, I'm sure I can do it, and I'm sure more people can do it. So I think for role models, just look around you. Everyone around you who is impacting the planet positively can and should be our role models.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. Brilliant. I mean, that's a brilliant answer. Of course, Jane Goodall, I mean, she is literally the queen of the chimpanzees. I know her. And I've been reading a book called Be Fearless by Jean Case, the CEO of the Case Foundation. And she talked extensively about her relationship with Jane Goodall. So I've been learning a lot about her and the pioneering work. I mean, she's a pioneering woman. So I can see exactly why she would be your role model. And that would be someone that you would name. But you also spoke about like Greta Thunberg. I mean, she's like the modern day Gen Z, like queen of environmentalism. She goes hard and she doesn't back down. And she's also, I believe, neurodiverse and many other things. So she's standing in the gap, in the gaps of diversity, and diversity meeting environmentalism in a way that we've never seen before. So I'm also a huge fan of Greta Thunberg and the work that she's doing. I think her passion is just crazy, off the charts. And a lot of us wish we had that, like, I call it the Malala effect. We wish we had that sort of presence where we can just be bold and brave like that. So I think she's amazing. But I also love that you reference a role model being an everyday person. And I think sometimes we always look towards, the celebrities and the influencers and the culture shapers and shifters to be our role models. But you're right, like, role models are everyday people, and they are people that, honestly, the people that make sure the recycling goes into the right bin. Those are role models. Or the people that carry a sustainable water bottle instead of using plastic, or the people that make sure to get their grocery bags from home, their reusable bags, instead of using plastic or paper bags. Like, these are the little things that, like you said, the people like me, that we do, because I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm trying to learn about the planet, and I'm trying to learn about how to take care of the planet, especially as I notice that the work that I do in racial equity is now so intertwined with environmentalism that there's a whole subset in America called environmental justice that speaks about the intersection of things. So I'm super excited that you're also talking about everyday people being able to be role models, because I think those listening will really feel empowered. So now I want to hop into your career section. So we're going to give you the room to flex your accomplishments and really talk about your career and how you've gone from, the nature loving child that you were into this sustainability expert, advocate, consultant, all the roles that you play. So I want to know about your years of schooling and education, because I think education is really the foundation to a career. In your years of schooling and education, what resources helped launch your career in environmentalism and sustainability?
My bachelor's degree was actually in pharmacy, so pharmaceutical science, so it's quite different, or in fact, totally different from the sustainability side of things. And I chose that career or that degree, because I knew that I like biology and like chemistry, and I also like interacting with people. So I like interacting to help patients with their conditions. So that's why I thought that pharmacy was a natural pull for me. It was along the way that I decided to actually go into sustainability as a career. Besides just being someone who appreciate nature, I thought that, okay, why not? I should do this thing or this particular job role that allows me to positively impact the planet. So I think it's more direct, and that's why I actually shifted from pharmaceuticals to actually pharmacy. So in terms of what materials did I look out for, I think it'll be things. There's so much resources nowadays. I think now compared to 10 years ago when we were studying, there's much more sustainability resources and different documents. For example, for those of you who are aware of sustainability reporting, I think there's a lot of different frameworks. To me, I think that reporting is a good foundation for sustainability, because in sustainability reporting, we actually learn about what metrics affects what industries and what sectors, and therefore what are things we should actually be more concerned about, or what are things which are more material to those sectors. So I'm going to say a few acronyms. So it'll be like things such as TCFD, GRI, or GHG protocol. So these are all sustainability resources, or rather frameworks, that I think is important to actually start off with. They aren't too complicated. It took me some time initially, many years back, to actually understand it. But I think nowadays there are more people out there to actually simplify such information, so it'll be helpful for you all as well. I think I also remember a website called Climate Change Academy. I believe it's still free, or for most of the resources there, so you can also search that out as well. It is great to see that nowadays more information is democratized, so we're able to have access to different sorts of information, whether it's podcasts, whether it's YouTube videos, or even free webinars. I think that's quite important as well. But I think in addition to just reading, because I'm not really a passive learner in the sense that I don't like to just read, I like to meet people. So in my educational side of things, I actually had the opportunity, and I'm very grateful for that people are actually willing to speak with me, to actually share with me their experience in sustainability, about what they are doing. And it basically gave me even more motivation to actually move, or pivot away from the pharmaceutical side of things into sustainability. So I think going out there to speak to people is important. And lastly, I think it's volunteering. I think volunteering in a role, whether is it a simple thing such as beach cleanup or helping the community, because as I said earlier, sustainability isn't just about the environment, it's about giving back. To me, it's about giving back. So even if you go for, maybe you can just do some Chinese New Year in Singapore, we have Chinese New Year giveaways, goodies, distribution to those people in need. To me, I think those are acts of sustainability, and it's through those acts that you will realize the benefit or the impact you are actually making, instead of just reading from somewhere and imagining that you can make all this positive impact. Why not go out there and do it? Do it. You can also learn things. You can also meet more people. I think that is what I have done during my education, and even beyond. Even when I'm working now, I'm also doing it. So I think these are all things that we can all do, and they are, and best of all, they're mostly free. So I'm sure everyone can start from there as well.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for highlighting that. I mean, first of all, thank you for making the transition from pharmacy into sustainability. I just want to give you a personal thank you for that. And hopefully you're thanking yourself. Not to say pharmacy isn't a great path, but because so many people get locked into that path because of the prestige, the money, the different perks that are associated with it. And they never really ask themselves, well, is it really the pharmacy industry that I like? Or is it, does medication excite me? Or is it the science? Or is it the aspect of innovation? Or, I think a lot of people who go the pharmaceutical route can do other things. And this is no shade to the pharmacists because they're so needed. But I think it's so easy to, like you're probably familiar with, become a doctor without really asking yourself, what are the deeper aspects of science that interest me? Or what about the human body interests me? Many people who become doctors can actually be medical innovators. They can actually transition and pivot into what really interests them in science rather than the day-to-day patient care. So I think shout out to you for really understanding, hey, what I study is not what I have to do, because that's something that we talk about a lot in the podcast, making that leap between what we study and what we really feel drawn to. And sometimes there is a connection, sometimes there's no connection, and that's okay. So I want to hear a little bit about like what influenced you to make the pivot from some pharmaceuticals into sustainability, and what do you think was the same or different about both paths?
Sure, thank you. I think what influenced me to answer that part of the question first would be to get experience, or to actually see what we as individuals can do beyond just in us being individuals, but also in companies. I think how we can positively shape the outcomes that a company does to the planet, because I think we all know that companies makes a positive and sadly negative impact to the planet as well. But we as individuals, if we are working in a company, can actually shift that away. For example, we can look at convincing different forms of management, or convincing those around us to actually have more sustainable practice. So it's the exposure that there's actually such a role. Because when I was extremely young, I don't think sustainability was a big thing then at all. So I didn't know that there's such a job role. In Singapore, there's often a thing called EHS, Environmental Health and Safety. But to me, I thought at that point in time, most of us would think that maybe it's just compliance purposes. There's not much analysis or shifting of impacts from negative to bad to positive. So I think it's the awareness that there's actually such a thing. And since I'm already doing it outside of school, which is like going for volunteering activities, why not do it also as a job? I think that if your job is something that you actually like, something that you have passion for, I mean, your job is for 30, 40 years. So you should do something that you truly enjoy and that you can actually be happy from. So that is the reason why I shifted away from pharmaceutics to sustainability. Not saying that pharmaceuticals I was not happy or anything, but I think that in pharmacy, yes, you are also helping the patients. It's very important. I think it's important to talk to them and to know what medications they need and how do we titrate or adjust the dosage or ensure there's no interactions between the drugs. That is extremely important. And as you also mentioned, I applaud all the pharmacists and doctors who are actually doing it as well. But I think that to me, I wanted a space that is more, that's always changing. Sustainability is always changing. Every day I wake up, in the morning when I read the news, it's always something new. It's always new developments. And I think this is something that excites me. So that was what actually made me confident to actually move from pharmaceutics to sustainability. And to answer the second part of the question about what is similar, what is different, I think while the content is different, clearly, but what is similar to me is the idea of science, which is also similar to what you mentioned, is that pharmacy is a science, sustainability, if you go deep into it, is also a science. Science shows us that the impact that we're doing to the planet is clearly not looking good, that we have certain limits we have to not pass the threshold, for example, 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial range. Those are from science. I think often we see sustainability as a business side of things, but I think it's important to drill down. There's actually science that is giving us all these insights. And my background in pharmacy, of reading a lot of literature papers and books, actually allowed me to better understand when I read sustainability papers, how do all these things work and why do all these things actually happen. So I think that does help, and that did help me as well. And of course, what is different, I think it's similar to what I shared earlier, is that sustainability is always changing. We never know what's going to happen. Even geopolitics also affects sustainability. Different leaders have different ability, different preference for sustainability. Even geopolitics, in the sense that leaders may want to get more votes and therefore they change sustainability policies suddenly. I don't think that anyone currently in the world is like a full expert, because it's always changing. We must always keep up. Whereas pharmacy is already well established. I think it's been here for hundreds and thousands of years already. So I think that's not, to me, it's not as exciting. To some, and I'm sure it is. So that's why I actually think these are the key difference and similarities between these two paths.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're definitely right. I think you're definitely right. It's that core like love of science that pushed you from one field to the next. It's that understanding like, hey, I'm a science person. But I also like that you highlighted two things that I think people should pay attention to when it comes to their career. You highlighted the difference between conservation, which is essentially what a pharmacist does, work with very similar medicines, track a patient's medicinal intake, different things like that. And you also work hand in hand with doctors to make sure that basically patients get the medicine they need, versus dynamism, right? Versus the dynamic nature of sustainability, where things are changing, the rules are always changing. By nature, the medical field relies heavily on conservation. Not to say that things don't change, but for example, when you give someone medicine, you have to observe them over time. So there's an element of time that's needed, and you'll often be taking the same, for example, prescription for a year or two sometimes before you see results. So I think you knew that you were the type of person that needed a dynamic environment. You needed an environment that was constantly changing. It's the same for me. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm attracted to dynamic environments. I like where my day is never the same. And I think that's why I knew I couldn't be any sort of in house marketer, which is what I was really supposed to do. Not to say marketing isn't exciting, but you're doing the same task sometimes over and over and over again. And as an entrepreneur, life throws you so many curveballs, and you get to work with so many new people all the time, and you get to experience new customers. And there's a newness that I think, and a freshness that I really gravitated towards. And yes, I host a podcast where I meet great people like you all the time. So I think I realized I was like you, and that I wanted something dynamic. So thank you for sharing that and highlighting the difference and how it plays in your career. So I kind of want to go to the work that you currently do. I know that you're currently working as a sustainability manager at Golden Energy and Resources. Can you tell me what an average day in the life is for you, and what types of people do you think would fit or excel in a similar role to the one you currently have?
Typical day of life for me, it would be that I'm someone who likes to keep my day starts early. So I always wake up at about 5 a.m. plus Singapore time. So I always want to work out first in the morning. So what I do is that I do Muay Thai. Muay Thai is a form of like kickboxing. So it's a Thai sport. So that's what I do in the morning. If not, I will also go to the gym. So I think I like to keep my day starting energetically. So I'll go to the gym and or Muay Thai in the morning. And after that, I will then go to work. So what I do in my work would be that I would first, it's a habit that I've already done. So it would be first would be to look at the news or latest happenings in the sustainability space. Are there any news legislations happening? Are there any new geopolitical situations or twists, especially this year in 2024? There is going to be a lot of elections. So how do all those things actually affect sustainability? Those are things that I keep a lookout for, and it's always so fast. So that's always what I do in the morning first. After that, then I'll do the usual things of looking at my emails, checking that I have no outstanding tasks. But I think after that, what will I do? Not every day will be that I'll actually evaluate what possible technologies are out there in the space that can be used for industries such as mining, so that we can see what is actually happening in the market and whether any of those technologies can actually be used. That is something that I've also done. And yeah, so after that will be lunch. So lunch is, I think, is a good time whereby we all can have a chat with our colleagues. I think that lunch is something that is a communal bonding, because it's often that in workplace maybe we're getting used to working in silos, but I think it's important to make use of lunch to actually talk to one another, and of course experience fresh air, which I think is very important instead of staying in your cubicles. And after lunch, then I will read up for more news, or I will do my typical research on, let's say, the different metals and commodities out there, to look at the ESG factors, sustainability factors, or to look into our key markets, which is, for example, Australia, any changes in the legislation also, and to also prepare presentation slides, which I think is important to work with internal and external stakeholders to actually keep them up to date about what exactly is happening. And of course, at the end of the day, when I go home, I think it's important to spend time with your family. That's what I do. And I'm also taking different courses. So I like to study. So I will also be studying at night as well. So I think this is how an average day in life works. no 2 days are the same for me. It's always different, but this is what I tend to do when it comes to a routine. And in terms of the second part of the question about what I would think are some good traits that people might want to have to fit in a similar role, I think it's the fact that they have to be willing to learn and be adaptable, because sustainability is always changing. We need someone who's like a sponge, correct, who is able to actually absorb information when it comes, but beyond just being a sponge, to actually distill what exactly is true, what exactly makes sense, what exactly is important to them. The news out there, there's so many different news channels, whether you're political or not, and then you may get consumed by the wrong source of media. It's so easy for one source of media to give a false news, and other media just keep on using this false news, and it amplifies the impact. And if we do not actually have we do not discern the information well enough, we could just be trapped in this fear of being in the world of fake news. So I think that willing to learn is important, but willing to critically think and ask ourselves, is this true or not, is even more important. So that's the first. And I think the second one I would recommend would be just be passionate. In this space, sustainability is not going to go away anytime soon, and I believe that it should be in everybody's job and roles. But for now, while it isn't, so I think that we need to be passionate and know that we truly want to be in this space. Do not come into this space because it is a trend or because you think you can make a lot of money from it. I think be in this space because you want to be in a long game, that you really believe in the effort that you're doing. If not, I'm sure that your enthusiasm will die out one day. So I think secondly is be passionate. If you're not passionate, I think that you can go to another field, because I think that there's other fields which may not need that much passion as compared to sustainability.
Yeah. Once again, like you're highlighting some amazing, amazing things that I want to echo on. I think definitely you're speaking about being a part of the 5 a.m. club, and that is like motivation to me and everyone that's like, hey, like I don't need to wake up early to succeed. Well, the most successful people in the world, I'm starting to realize, do wake up early, and they do master the morning to master the day. So I appreciated that you said you wake up early, you start early, and I think that speaks to your sense of purpose, and that getting up out of the bed for you must be easy. For a lot of people, it's not. I can guarantee you there's a couple listeners saying, I hate my job. I'm always late. I struggle to make it on time. But you really are embodying that when you're living a purpose-driven life, it also impacts other areas of your literal life, like not just your career, but your health, your physical health, your mental health, your ability to wake up with a sense of fervor and honestly passion. And even you exercising immediately after waking up shows like how dedicated you are as well to your physical health. And I feel like it just, like I said before, it shows that every time you live when in accordance with your purpose, it radiates to every area of your life. And that is never an investment that you will not get your return on. One of the things that I also like that you said is that sustainability is a long game. And I think anything, honestly, any sort of social change work is a long game. If you don't have the passion for it, results don't come quickly. You have to have the passion for it. And one of the things I'm saying to people now is you need to be willing to suffer for your ideas. Suffer for the change that you feel like needs to happen. And that's how you know you've chosen the right path, where you say to yourself, I'm willing to suffer for this. I'm willing to suffer to see this to happen. And the suffering is not necessarily like you're broke, or, I mean, we done seen artists go broke and people go broke for their craft. But the suffering is more in terms of like, I will literally, proverbially, spiritually die, right? To see this happen. I will die to myself. I will develop the discipline I've never had before. I will wake up at hours I've never woken up before to see this happen and to see this change. And I think that's how you know you're on the right path. So I definitely think you're on the right path. All right, so let's get into quick culture questions, and then we're going to play our game and we're going to close out. So I feel like I want to know, because I know that you also do work with a London charity. How does sustainability work different in London, which is more, we could say, the westernized context, right? From the work happening in Singapore, which is an Eastern context.
So I think that for me, yes, I do work. I'm board member or trustee when it comes to the London charity called Report Out. So I think that I'm not, but personally, I'm not very sure if there's any legislation when it comes to charities having to be green or having to be sustainable. But what I'm very happy that Report Out has actually committed to doing is that there's a carbon neutrality goal by 2030. So what I do is basically to look for efforts and policies to actually ensure that Report Out is on track to be carbon neutral by 2030. And if I do a quick summary of what Report Out does, is they basically look at the LGBTQIA plus group and community. And what I do is to see the intersection between the climate emergency or climate change and the community, because I think there's a huge implication when it comes to climate change on the LGBTQIA plus community. And that's what I'm also trying to promote, in the sense that we need to be aware of such things and not pretend that it's not happening. Because only when we promote such things, then we are more aware of how can we actually help different groups of people. So that's what I do for Report Out. And I think that in terms of what is the difference between London and Singapore, I think that we have to consider a few factors. Is that there are different factors that affects the different sustainability or climate policies that the government is actually ruling out or coming out with. So, for example, let's look at size. In UK or in London, I think it's about 70 million in UK compared to Singapore. We are pretty a small nation. It's about 5.5 million. Some people may not know where is it even, but it's Southeast Asia. So that's number one. Number two is energy demand. From what I read, I think the energy demand for Singapore is about 54.9 terawatt hours, and compared to London or UK, which is about 320. So that's much more. Another thing would be about energy source. So the Singapore's majority of our energy comes from natural gas, whereas in UK it is gas, wind, nuclear. In Singapore, I don't think there's any nuclear. So we can see that there's all these different factors that will affect what the government will make. And in addition to that, I think that in Singapore, we are still increasingly becoming more sustainable, but we are not totally sustainable yet, because we are I think the Asian side of things is developing very fast, but I think it's not as compared to the EU or in UK, if I may add. So that would be some context that we can keep in mind when we look at the policies that the governments actually roll out. So the difference, to answer that question, is that I think Singapore, we have the geopolitical situation is always quite constant, meaning there's always a ruling party which has done considerably well in all the past elections. So that actually provided some stability to the policies that they roll out. Meaning that if they say that by 2030 there'll be some goals, they will probably hit it because they've announced, and a sudden government change would probably not happen, and which make the target not attainable anymore. So that stability is important to me, I feel, as compared to, let's say, in UK. And by UK, I think there is I think elections also going to happen this year or early January in 2025. But I think that the policies may change when it comes to climate change. For example, I know that the current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak from the UK, actually, he did say, I think last year, that they will actually be looking to actually reduce the amount of green measures, because he believes that UK is still on track to hit their net zero target in 2050. So you see, there's all this sudden change in the UK as compared to Singapore. And one possible reasons might be due to certain parties wanting to get more votes, which leads to such change, which I don't think is going to happen or is happening in Singapore yet. So that, I think, is one key difference with the difference between working or volunteering in London compared to in Singapore. And I think that is quite useful for me in Singapore, because I know how things will play out in Singapore, but also because I have the opportunity to work in other regions, then I still have to keep up to date. I think those are the things that are the key difference to me.
Yeah, I think that those are some really, really important key differences. And as you know, this sustainability movement isn't just one that we can say, reduce, reuse, and recycle. We can't reduce it to a jingle. Like you said, you dropped that word bomb on us, geopolitical, right? Geopolitical, like it is a geopolitical issue, right? There are political issues that intersect with the environmental issues, and that can create different contexts for how sustainability is done, or even how sustainability is seen, depending upon the geography. I love that you discussed that in London, you're really working at the intersection. So they've started to realize sustainability affects different marginalized communities. You talk about the LGBT community and the work that you're doing around sustainability over there. But I think that also you talked about Singapore and London having different energy usages. So you're also seeing this from a quantitative, like metric-based perspective, in that the sustainability efforts in London will look differently from those in Singapore, due to the fact that there's different often uses and demands for energy. There's probably more diversity in one region than the other, and that tends to affect how things are done. So I love that you came from that perspective, because it really shows me that you're a maestro at your work, right? That you go deep into things and you're thinking about things from a different perspective. And I guarantee you, like, the sustainability geeks listening just geeked out over what you said, because a lot of what you said is so important, understanding the geopolitical landscape. And as you all know, as a guest know, the culture part of the podcast is where we discuss the broader ramifications of the work that we do. So I'm grateful to Lewis for discussing that. So the last question I have for you is, this is helping our the westernized American people across the ocean. In America, sustainability is heavily political. with politicians denying aspects of climate change to secure party support. It is ghetto out here. I just got to say it. In terms of the sustainability movement, people are just left and right. I'm sure you're familiar with some of the political discourse in America that is just out of control. People are saying climate change is a farce. People are saying that carbon footprint doesn't matter. Like there's literally people just going out and saying these big and bold and audacious things just to get votes. And because you've worked in not only the London context, but the Singapore context, I'm wondering if you have any tips for the young change makers that want to impact sustainability through legislator in a global context. So think like they want to impact the US and the Asian market and the UK or European market. What tips will you have for them navigating these political limbos that often exist in the different regions?
I think in terms of what I would recommend youth to do when it comes to impacting a global context, I think is number one is to be aware. I think is to be aware of what is happening in the global scheme of things. As you mentioned, US is I think there's an election period coming up this year as well, and there's the Democrats and Republicans. So I think that we need to be aware, or youth in general need to be aware of why is there this such a movement, especially in US. Why is there this divide when it comes to sustainability or ESG between Democrats and Republicans? Are they having certain point of views? Because it might not always be the case whereby one point of view is right, then the other is wrong, but there could be some overlap. So I think it's to find exactly where is the overlap between these two ideas that we can actually bring both sides together. Because I think that we should not see the world as being divisive, but we should see it as trying to bring people together. So to be able to impact on the global side of things, we should find such groups who are so-called, in a sense, fighting against one another, and to see if there's any common synergies, so that if we were to propose any policies or legislations, whether it comes to writing on our LinkedIn page or writing to government, because I'm sure they're open to feedback, we can actually propose solutions that are not ideological, they are not in just in theory, but can actually be done. So I think that's number one, is to be aware and to find synergies between the different side of things. I think the second thing I would actually recommend on the global side of things will also be to just go for to join different clubs and societies. I think that there are different organizations. I believe UN, there's also a youth sustainable development network out there also. I think go for all these groups and organizations, because that will allow you to actually interact with different groups of people to learn about how are they feeling about sustainability or climate change in their country. It is not, I personally, I feel that it's not good to just be a bystander, to look out and look in, but I think that we should be together with others and look outwards to see that how is sustainability actually impacting them. Once we know how people actually feels in the country, we are then better able to actually come up with, as I said earlier, more policies or suggestions to actually bring different groups of people together. So I think to join all these organizations, just spend some time. I think it's worth it. And I think last point I wanted to share is also to just go for forums. There are also, I think there's also different types of UN forums, etc. I think most of them are also available for commoners or people like me or you to actually just go and join and listen in and to just give feedback. Because forums are a place not just for high level people to talk, but also I believe, I hope, sincerely hope, there's also a place whereby people like us can actually give our feedback. And I think that is where, and if we don't give our feedback, no one can actually improve. And our feedback may not always be right, but I think that giving our views, our perspectives will help the policymakers actually shape their decision. Because to me, policymakers are there to come up with regulations or to come up with policies to help the people in their own country. And since they need to get the votes as well. So it makes sense to me. So therefore, also go for farmers, be out there, just be willing to speak and give facts. Don't give things which may not be completely true, because if not, that will worsen the whole issue. But I think there's a lot of things that we all can actually do to play a part when it comes to the global legislative side of things.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, Lewis, we are coming to the end of our episode recording. This was powerful. Woo! Fire emojis. Nah, this was really powerful. Oh, well, green hearts as well for the sustainability movement and people. This was fire. I feel like you flowed. I feel like this was really amazing, and I'm excited for the listeners to benefit from your knowledge, your passion, and also your diversified yet simultaneously deep skill set in the sustainability space. I know so many people are interested in this, and I'm really excited to release this episode and get people to really hear directly from someone doing the work, who's always loved the work, what it is like for you. You covered so many things, from the political aspects to even how we as as individual consumers can do and be better for the environment. So I just want to shout out to you. Thank you. Clap emojis. But we are going to play a game before we leave. So bringing it back to our pop purpose section where we talked a lot about pop culture and the intersection of what the European Union is trying to do with the greenwashing. I have a game called Much More Than a Greenwash, right? So we're going to name 10 popular everyday items, aka household items, things you would find around your house, and you're going to tell us which store or preferably brand has a good sustainable version of it. So this is like a rapid fire round. I hope you are ready. Okay. The first one is toothbrushes.
Toothbrushes. I would say Colgate. I think that's one. Yes.
Okay. Colgate. Okay. Pens and pencils.
Pens and pencils. I'll say Faber-Castell. That's what I use. Yes.
Okay. Okay. We're going to have to get these links. I'll get these links from you. All right. Thank you. Phone cases, sustainable phone cases.
In fact, I do not use a phone case. I think that I don't need a phone case, and I hopefully I've never really dropped my phone that is spoiled before. So I think that I personally don't use phone cases that much. Yes, I think that if possible, we should not use as much things which we do not need. But I think that there's a value in phone case, just that I don't use them.
Yeah. Okay. So your sustainable is like no phone case. I like it. I like the minimalist life too, and they're super expensive these days. So I get it. No phone case is a better way to go. What about phone chargers? Are there any sustainable phone chargers?
I do not think there's a sustainable phone chargers. I mean, my phone is an iPhone, so I would have to use an Apple phone chargers. I think that for that point, I think that Apple is trying to be more sustainable. That they come out with carbon neutrality and advertisement about it. But there's of course a lot of questions about whether is it truly carbon neutral. I believe it's the Apple Watch or something. So I'm forced in a sense to use an iPhone. I mean, I'm not to use an iPhone charger because I'm using an iPhone. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's carbon neutrality situation. All right. So is it the same? The next question is the next number is laptops. Is it the same for computers? Is there any computer brand that's trying to be a bit better in terms of energy usage and such?
I'm not an expert when it comes to that, but I think that I'm also using a MacBook because I'm using an iPhone. So maybe I'm trapped in this Apple world whereby once you get one, you get the rest. So yes, I think I'm using a MacBook. I think that Apple is, to me, I think the answer will be the same. I think Apple is trying their best, or at least they are aware that consumers are increasingly demanding their the supplier or the producer of their of the electronic devices to be more sustainable. So I have not studied in depth whether is it truly sustainable, but I think that they are one of the more prominent brands out there, and I hope that they are not greenwashing still. So yes.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So the last are some couple boring ones. Body wash. This is the next one. Body wash.
Body wash. Body wash. Let me try and think which is the body wash that I can't. No, body wash, I can't remember what is it, but it's just from those convenience store down my house. So it's from a local brand, I believe, because I think that it's important to, some things it's important to actually buy local, because if you buy things from overseas, there's also shipping emissions, there's also the air freight emissions. So those are unnecessary emissions that we can just get from local, and I think it's important to support local players.
Okay. And the last one is sustainable paper and notebooks.
Sustainable paper and notebook. I use recycled paper in the sense that because in my office when we ever print paper, there may be some sides we only use one side, so I just use on those things as well. And I'm also shifting a lot of things to being digital nowadays, or typing on MacBook, making full use of it. If not, it's unnecessary wastage. So yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Lewis. All right, we are at the end of our game. Thank you so much. And I don't know if you have a closing reflection on the podcast episode, how this recording process was for you, and then we'll close out.
I think my closing remarks would be that I think that we all, regardless of which part of the world that we are in or what role we have to play in our company, or even if we're entrepreneurs, there's so much things that we all can do. And it may seem overwhelming at first to we have to do so many things. But I think for us, we just need to look at what is material, which is what is important, or what are small things that we can slowly do to actually play our part for this planet. So maybe for me, what I did initially was to look at my day. What have I done throughout the day, or which part of the things I can make more sustainable? For example, I'm trying to eat less meat nowadays. I'm still eating a lot of meat because that's what I'm gymming and everything for that. But I'm trying to eat less meat and eating more vegetable, because I think we all know that meat has a huge amount of carbon from the producing from the animals as well. So I'm trying to do these small things. These small things to us may not seem like a lot, but I believe that they will all add up. That's number one. I think number two is that we should not do things just for the sake of doing. For example, we should not just plant trees for the sake of planting trees. We should really ensure that the trees that we are planting will be there for long term. It's no point planting one tree and the next year is gone. So I think to question whatever we are doing, is it truly impacting the environment or not? So those are things that I actually want to share, and we all can play a part. So I hope that everyone is has some tips here and there. But if anyone wishes to know more, you can always reach out to me, and I'm always happy to have conversations to learn more from you as well, and to also hopefully share some tips with you all. Yeah, thank you. And it was a great experience here, Suraya. Thank you for these tips.
That is it. All right, we're out. Purposeful Professional people. Bye. See you later.
This conversation was nothing short of amazing. Lewis has the mind of an environmental scientist and the heart of your favorite college professor. This episode was a masterclass on what it truly means to take care of the earth and how to center that in your work. I don't think there's anything more purposefully professional than that. Lewis' story exemplifies that our purpose might be lying right in front of us. In fact, it might involve caring for the very earth that we call home and live our lives upon. After hearing this episode, we have a wealth of ways we can all serve the environment and promote a healthy planet wherever we are. Lewis, continue to make a difference in the environmental and sustainability sectors. We are rooting for you. All right, everybody. This is Saraya from the Purposeful Professional Podcast, the podcast for your career, the people, and the culture. We're out. Until next time. Bye.